Well, I'm Professor Donal Wall, working in the School of Infection and Immunity. I'm head of bacteriology. So initially, there were some conversations amongst some microbiome researchers across the UK. And what we're interested in doing is trying to put forward a case for increased funding for microbiome research. So we'd met a couple of times. We had met at the House of Lords and particularly presented some data on the gummy network this Glasgow University Microbiome Initiative has set up here. We talked about that and how that could be a framework maybe to go forward to get a pan UK network, which now thankfully is happening. And then as a follow up to these discussions, we said let's submit evidence to the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee that asked for evidence on particular things that they're going to put under the microscope, as they put it. So we submitted some evidence on the microbiome, and they selected my written evidence as something they'd like to take forward for the committee. And then also they selected the evidence of the Microbiology Society, so that I was asked to go represent myself and also the society as well. Well, I thought I was one of the six. I didn't know until afterwards there's 300 applicants, so that was quite nice to know that. I wasn't particularly sure what I wrote in my evidence that was so convincing that they wanted to understand this, but I think it was maybe the weight of evidence towards bringing this forward on the microbiome as a topic, because it is so wide ranging. I mean, it spans from human health to soil health, plant health, everywhere in the environment is microbiome. So I think they could see the wide ranging potential of this area of research, and that's probably why they brought it forward. And certainly when it went, the committee were really interested in a number of questions afterwards. So it was really, really good to put it out there. I think it was something, there was a couple of reports from UKRI probably about 5 or 6 years ago highlighting that this was something that needed to be addressed. They referred to it, it was the UKRI Microbiome Capability Report. So the idea being that there's a lack of capability in the UK and we need to catch up with the US and Europe, for example. So a number of researchers had discussed this, and off the back of that, I set up this network in Glasgow. And then there was kind of ongoing discussions, and that was brought forward to the House of Lords as kind of, is this a way forward to have individual networks at universities? And Liverpool have now very successfully set up a network as well. So the idea that maybe we could bring all this together to bear across the UK, and then maybe we could get a head of steam that we could then become more competitive as a kind of research community. And that's still the goal. And there is now the UK gut immunology brain axis that's just been set up, sponsored by the BBSRC. So it's nice to see there are some effects, not necessarily from this evidence in particular, but it's nice to see that the efforts of a lot of people over the past probably 5 to 10 years are now starting to pay fruit, and it's getting more attention and crucially more funding as well. I suppose that there's serious gaps, and we work a lot with Innovate UK. We discuss a lot with them, and they have a particular knowledge transfer network that's specific on the microbiome. They talk about the inability to translate a lot of work in the UK to become successful companies. There's also a lack of equipment, and often for these types of research, as for many other areas, you really need quite advanced equipment to be competitive. And I think getting across that we needed to be more competitive, and we needed to take these really good ideas from basic science and then translate them into something a bit more meaningful, and to translate them into actual spin-out companies, etc. That's kind of the message we're trying to get across. And it'll continue to be the message for the next while, because particularly in the US, we see really, really successful spin-out companies. We see a lot of funding in this area, and we struggle to be competitive, and we need more funding. We have brilliant scientists here who do fantastic basic science, but it's just getting them what they need in order to bring it to the next level, I think, is the message. So yeah, very receptive. I got very positive feedback, thankfully from colleagues across the UK as well, which is always a worry when you go up and you speak upon a subject. You're worried that you're not going to get the message across as best you can. But I think I got very positive feedback from colleagues across the UK, which is really quite reassuring that you know, I haven't missed anything, or I've got the message across as best I can. Got very positive feedback from the committee afterwards. They will look a bit more about the microbiome in the context of One Health and the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee. So it's good to see things are moving forward. So they'll pick further ones to bring forward, and as I said, there will be further evidence on the microbiome in future. And already the Microbiology Society have been in contact about that, but it's more specific, probably to food security and innovation around those areas. So at that point, I'll defer to others who've got much greater knowledge of that. But I'm helping with that at the moment, and there's also some follow reports as well from the Microbiology Society as well on this as well. So. I think it's probably who you speak to. There's clearly, there are gaps, and microbiome research tends to be very bioinformatics heavy. We also do a lot of work on, say, metabolomics to understand what the microbiome is producing. There's culture aspects. So there's so many different pieces of equipment that we can use. So I think it's more that, because I think in the last decade or so, there's been a real lack of funding for equipment, in particular in the UK. This is somewhere we probably could be helped most readily, or most quickly. But there are other aspects as well. I mean, everybody who works in microbiome science will have input into what should be needed. But again, this was meant to be a first step where we could like put it out there. And then the idea is more and more people could then file in and actually contribute to any report that was going to come out of it. So to some extent, that was kind of planting the seeds, and then the idea is we'd all come in afterwards and start to work out the nitty gritty. But as regards where funding is needed, I think it is probably needed across the board really for this type of research. But again, that's not unique to microbiome research, so yeah. So it was broadcast live, which was quite daunting, but I think I was away on holidays when I was told that this was going to happen, so I had to do 5 or so minute pitch, and then questions afterwards for like 10 minutes. But I think the challenge was made easier because I practiced on my two kids, and I think if you can explain these kind of things to kids and not laugh or not get nervous in front of them, I think that was a really useful experience, and my wife was really helpful as well in helping to polish the pitch. But I think probably the most challenging aspect was it probably didn't come across in the video. It was like 35 degrees in the room, which was incredibly, incredibly hot. And I'm not a suit wearer the best of times. So it was a warm day, but I was just really happy that it went well. And I think, all you can do is get your message across as best you can. I think that happened. And then after that, it's up to the committee what they do with it. But a really useful experience. Yeah, there was a lot of questions on probiotics, which was quite an interesting question. And again, I, probiotics, in my opinion, have quite a long way to go. But again, I didn't want to be overly negative, but at the same time, there was follow-up questions. So, yeah, but the questions, overall they were interesting. They were, as I said, quite focused on probiotics. I touched on another couple of subjects afterwards, and followed on, I think there was another couple of speakers, one mentioning antimicrobial resistance and biofilms after me. And again, they came back to some of the points I had made and asked further questions of her as well. So, but yeah, the questions for the most part are okay. Yeah, I mean, I think when I went to the House of Lords probably 3 to 4 years ago, and I presented on some of the work on the microbiome in Glasgow, I think one of the take-home messages was that there are probably not that many scientists in Parliament. And I think it was reassuring to sit in front of the committee and to like research who sits on the committee and see that actually there is a lot more scientific input now in Parliament. There are people there who have the expertise and who you can talk to and do understand the scientific aspects of what you're saying. And again, the questions, they're well informed. So I was reassured. It's nice to sit there and to have a conversation and not just feel that you're presenting something that they're just listening to as a token exercise. It wasn't. It was a genuine exercise where they were really, really interested, and the questions for all the speakers were really well informed, and they'd clearly done some background research as well and read what had been sent in evidence, which was really, really good. Something that myself and Adam Dobson from the School of Molecular Biosciences set up a number of years ago. And the idea was, can we get all the people who work on microbiome research in the university to come together? And this can be in any aspect of microbiome research, from soil microbiology, plants to the human gut, and kind of pool our expertise. And we came together and we had a research day, and I think we had about 30 or 40 research groups attend the day. Unfortunately, after that, we then had we had lockdown with all these different aspects out for a long story. I was off for a period of time as well. So the plan is to try and revive this again because we've had a lot of interest from industry. We've been reached out to by industry from China and India and places who are really keen to engage. And I think what the UK hasn't had up to now has been a public kind of face for microbiome research. I think this initiative gave us that. And I mentioned Liverpool, they have a microbiome innovation centre. They are now getting industry from across the UK coming to their conferences because they really want to engage with basic science. So I think these kind of initiatives put it on the map and show that there are options outside of the US, outside of Europe, outside of places like the APC, which is in Cork and Ireland as well. These were the places attracting funding. And I think if we give them another option, then hopefully we can get some funding to Glasgow for stuff like that as well. Yeah, I do. I think the microbiome has got a bit of a bad rap because, like a number of areas, when it first comes to prominence, it kind of gets a bit oversold. And I think that was part of my evidence as well, as I don't want to come across as a cheerleader for the microbiome. I would regard myself as one of the most negative microbiome researchers out there. I deal in kind of causative relationships between the microbiome and human health rather than correlative. So very, very important that we're realistic about what it can do. But I think in doing my research for this, you realize that there are so many companies that are now investing in this area. I mean, huge numbers of companies, vast amounts of money. And clearly these people aren't investing in this area without good reason. And I do believe, particularly areas like women's health, I think is very, very, it's going to be very important going forward. Gut health, obviously, some great work going on in inflammatory bowel disease, particularly in Glasgow in this area through the Bingo group. And I do think in future it will be quite important and it will be a factor in a lot of health choices. But I think it all comes down to, for the most part, it's healthy living, eat well, look after yourself, and your microbiome tends to follow for the most part. So it was nice. I actually didn't really tell anyone here because no, I was on leave at the time, so no, I did tell some people, but it was more that because I was away at the time. I was actually in Centre Parks bizarrely at the time, so there was a lot of prep, when I was away from work. So I suppose probably people here weren't as aware as if I was, here at the time. But yeah, no, it was really nice for the department to see that, and again, really positive for the department. We're a very young department. We have a lot of new PIs here, so it's really nice that we can kind of put ourselves on the map and get ourselves out there because this is, my attitude will be kind of onwards and upwards. We're growing. We're only going to get better, and I think it's nice that we can put ourselves out there as experts in various fields. So that was positive. No, we've published in various bits of data at the moment. Particularly, we're interested in how the microbiome affects human physiology, or not human, sorry, mammalian physiology. We've got various papers on that. We've got some really nice posters I can show you outside depicting this. But the whole idea is we want to understand how particular microbes in the gut are influencing physiology by actually pumping essentially small molecules from the gut, and these go systemically and affect various ways our physiology works. It can affect metabolism, cell, I suppose how long cells live, things like this. So very specific data. Take quite a while to describe it all, but yeah. But I mean, these are ongoing projects, and I think this is the thing with the microbiome. I think it's going to be something that it's intricate. It's a very complex area of science, and I think it's going to be a lot of different people coming from a lot of different angles using different technologies to manage to understand exactly how it's affecting us. But yeah, all the evidence indicates that it does, and it does significantly. So.